Hello, good afternoon. My name is April Schoen. I'm glad you're joining me today because today we're going to be talking all about drop decisions and how do you make the most out of your drop payout. So I work primarily with state of Florida employees who are getting close to retirement. Many of them are already in drop, and I hear a lot of the same questions. What should I do with my drop payout? How should I invest it? When should I take Social Security? What are taxes going to do to my plan? And how do I handle healthcare? So if that's you, if you're asking some of those questions, then just know you're in the right place today. And while we're not going to cover all of those today, our focus really is going to be on drop and how do you set it up so it actually supports your retirement. Because I get it. There are a lot of moving parts. You've got FRS rules and drop mechanics and taxes and deadlines. And as we all know, the sooner that you start getting a plan in place, the better it's going to be. So I'm glad that you're here and getting started today if you're just kind of getting started on that journey, because in the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a simple way for you to understand, hey, what is drop? How's it going to impact me? And what are some simple ways that I can decide what's going to be best for me and for my family? So today we're going to talk about how do you make the most of your drop payout, and more importantly, how does it apply to you? We're going to cover three key areas. How drop works, so I want to make sure we're all on the same page. What are your options? Lump sum, direct rollover, combination, and then how do you set it up so that your drop supports your retirement, coordinates with your pension and your Social Security, and then also how do you avoid some of those big mistakes that I often see. Now, I'm going to move quickly today. I'm going to try to keep this high level. So if at any point you're thinking, whoa, I need some help with this, I'm going to show you a quick way at the end how you can book a retirement focused session so you can get help with some of these questions that we have. So if you don't have it already, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper. As we're going through, you may want to jot down some notes and think like, oh, I need to ask April about this, or I have got a question here. This is something that I want to follow up on. So just jot down any kind of questions and notes that you have as we go so that we can work on them together. Before we get into the actual options on what to do with your drop payout, I want to talk a little bit about why this decision matters so much, why this decision is high stakes, and where do people get burned? Because when we're talking about like what to do with your drop account, and even more important than that is just your overall plan for retirement, these are high impact, often irrevocable choices, especially when we're talking about your drop payout, because once you pick a path and it lands in a specific year, there's no do-over, right? There's no going back and changing your mind, because once we reach a certain point, it's the point of no return. Right? There's tax timing. So done in the wrong year, a large withdrawal from like your drop can push you into higher brackets, can cause you to have to pay higher Medicare premiums. That's how this payout can become a tax problem. So we want to avoid the tax problem. And you might be thinking, April, the state automatically withholds taxes if I cash out my drop. You're right. They're going to withhold 20% from your distribution, but that can create some false confidence. You could still end up owing thousands more come tax time, and that can be complicated by a bigger problem, especially if you've already spent the money, right? So this is why we want to do planning in advance before we have a big tax problem. And then investing before you know the job. If we don't decide whether these dollars are for income, growth, liquidity, debt payoff, you'll end up putting them in the wrong bucket and you may regret it later. So we're going to avoid all three of these issues by deciding the job of the drop payout first, and then choosing the option, and then choosing the investment that's going to match. I talked with someone earlier this week who's retiring in a few years from the state, and they told me, April, my main goal is simple. I just want to know that I'm going to be okay. I just want to know that I'm going to have the income coming in that I need to continue living my life, and I'm not going to be forced to go back to work. And isn't that true for most of us? Isn't that what we want? Right? And that's what this really is all about, is about making sure that you have the retirement that you want, that you can live the life that you want in retirement, whatever that looks like for you, right? That could be traveling, that could be moving to another place in the country because you want to be near family, that could be volunteering, starting a job or like a business, whatever that looks like for you. It's having these things like drop or deferred comp or other assets supporting the life that you want in retirement. That's why this is so important. And I'm glad that you're here today tuning in as we go through this. So I want to walk through drop itself for a minute, just so I can make sure we're all on the same page. Sometimes there's some confusion about how drop actually works. So when you go into drop, the state now treats you as retired for pension purposes. Your monthly pension now starts going into a separate account in your name, and it earns 4% a year while you're still working. And then when you fully separate from service, this is when you're going to receive this accumulated lump sum, your drop account, your drop amount, whatever you want to call it. And here's the important part. You can't leave the money in drop. You have to make a decision. And if you don't make a decision, if you do not tell the state what to do with your drop, they're going to pay it out to you in a lump sum, which is all 100% taxable. And that's what most people want to avoid. And this is where people can make expensive mistakes because they don't take the time to look at all their options. So today we're going to walk through all your options, and then how do you decide which is best for you? So in my work with clients, we start with the job of the drop account. Is it liquidity? Is it income? Is it growth? And if we decide the job first, everything else just kind of falls into place. And you'll see that in a little bit as we go through what to do. So with that in mind, let's kind of walk through the options and then talk about where does each one of these options fit. When you fully retire, you have fully separated, you're leaving drop, you've got 3 choices. You can do a lump sum, a direct rollover, or a combination. I'm going to keep this high level here because we're going to go deeper into each option next. So the first is lump sum. This one's pretty simple. The state's going to withhold 20% for taxes, and they're going to mail you a check for the remaining amount. Pretty simple. I'll give you a quick example. If your drop amount is going to be $100,000, they're going to send $20,000 to the IRS on your behalf, and then you're going to get the $80,000 in the mail by check. Because that drop amount is taxed in the year you receive it if you choose lump sum. So it gets added on top of all your other income for the year, and that's how it's going to be taxed when you go to file your taxes. That's why that 20% could be too much, could not be enough. You really have to look at that to make sure that you've got enough withheld for taxes, or that you're reserving enough to the side to pay for it. Now, the direct rollover, this is a non-taxable transfer. You can transfer it to deferred comp, you can transfer it to an IRA. So taxes are deferred when it's rolled over, and you get to keep control. An IRA usually offers the widest investment choices because you're not limited to what the deferred comp provider has available for you. And then when you take withdrawals later, one, you get to decide how much you want to take out and when, but that's when the income is considered taxable. It's only when you start to pull money out of the deferred comp or the IRA. And again, you get to choose. When do I take it out? How much do I take out? How much do I have withheld for taxes? How do I have it invested? So this is what's going to give you more control. And then a combination of the two means the state sends you, let's say like a partial lump sum now, and then you roll the rest over so it keeps working. So we're going to walk through each of these in more detail, and then I'll show you how a plan helps you make the right choice because it becomes very obvious what's needed for your situation. So first, let's talk about the lump sum. As I said, it's simple. They're just going to mail you a check for your drop amount minus taxes. But for many people, it's the most expensive choice. If you take the lump sum, it's taxed in the year you take it. It stacks on top of all your other income. And that's when it can push you into higher tax brackets. And for some, increase your Medicare premiums. Because if you make over a certain amount, then you end up having what's called IRMA charges, and that really is just having higher Medicare premiums. The state will withhold 20% by default and send that to the IRS for taxes, but that's not your final tax bill. So depending on your total income, if you file single, if you file joint, thinking about the other income you earned that year, maybe you have a leave payout on top of it, that 20% withholding, it could be too much taxes, it could be not enough. Now, I see a lot of people pick cash, the lump sum, to pay off debt, maybe to make a big purchase. Maybe they're going to buy a car or an RV, or they're going to move and buy a house, or they want to use it to pay off a mortgage or pay off debt. And, sometimes that feels really good in the moment. But after that tax hit, it's usually not the smartest path. A cleaner approach is actually to roll it over first and then just take targeted withdrawals in the right year with the right withholding. So then you have the same dollars, but you have a better outcome. And it also gives you more control because once you cash it out, it's gone. If you do the rollover, you have money in an IRA, you have money in deferred comp. It's not that you don't have the option to cash that out later. You could still take that money out whenever you want to, but now you're doing it on your terms. I met with a client a few years ago when she was retiring, and she wanted to take a big lump sum out of her drop to pay off some debt. I get it, totally understandable. It feels clean, it feels decisive, it feels good to walk into retirement with no debt. But instead of taking it right away, we looked at the numbers, and what we did is we rolled her drop to an IRA, and then we waited until the following year after she retired. Because now her income was going to be lower. She's getting her pension, she's getting her Social Security. So we took out the distribution from the IRA in the next tax year to pay off the debt. So she had the same outcome, right? Same outcome, same debt paid off, but we saved her thousands in taxes just by timing it correctly. And it was only a few months difference. So she got the same goal, but done in a more tax efficient way and saved her thousands in taxes. Direct rollover, I find, is usually the cleanest path because it defers taxes and it keeps your options open. You can roll your drop to deferred comp or to an IRA. An IRA is usually better if you want the widest investment choices and then you don't want to be limited by what deferred comp has to offer you. Here's a common misconception. The transfer itself is not taxable. Moving your drop directly to deferred comp or an IRA is considered a non-taxable transfer. From there, the money continues to grow tax deferred until you take it out. And you're not locked up. If you are over 59 and a half, you can take withdrawals right away with no penalties. You only have to pay tax, right? Only the amount that you actually withdraw counts as taxable income, not the entire account. So let's again use an example. Your drop is $250,000. You roll that to an IRA, and let's say next year you wanted to take $5,000 out to go on a trip. That $5,000 is what is considered taxable income in the year you take it. And you can have the IRA, you can have deferred comp, withhold taxes, and receive that net payment. So you can do that the same with having tax withholding. One of the most common questions I get when it comes to drop is, how do I invest it? And I recommend investing by purpose so every dollar has a job. So let's walk through income, liquidity, and growth and what those mean and how do you set it up. So income, dollars set up to pay you regular income. That could be monthly, that could be yearly, however you want to take it. Think high quality income sources, dividends, interest, designed to cover what your pension and Social Security don't. Then you have liquidity. Think cash-like money sources for short-term needs, unexpected expenses, market volatility, so that you're not forced to sell at a bad time. And then you have growth assets. This is long-term money that's meant to grow for the future to help outpace inflation and support you in your later years. Sometimes clients tell me, April, I don't know how to invest it, and I don't know enough to be able to pick the best investments inside each bucket. And this is exactly where professional advice comes in, because what matters most is this. First, we decide what job Drop needs to do in your retirement plan, and then we invest it accordingly. That's what my team and I do every day that we meet with clients. We help you pick the right buckets first, we build it in the right way, and then we adjust it over time as life changes. So back on this rollover, it does, like I said, it gives you more control on taxes, when to take it out, how to have it invested in different buckets without being stuck. So one client we worked with, they have a solid Social Security and pension plan. They both work for the state, so they both have pensions, both have Social Security. But when we looked at their spending plan, there was still a gap in what they'd like to have coming in guaranteed income to cover their lifestyle, to cover their living expenses. So we used Drop to fill that gap, and then that allowed their other assets to be positioned more for discretionary income and also that long-term growth, instead of trying to do everything at once, or instead of having one account to do all those things. Because you can't have one account do all of those things, right? Provide income, provide growth, and liquidity. We have to have it invested by the purpose for what that account needs to do for your plan. So next, let's go through the combination, how it works, and then we'll also talk about how do you put this all together to decide which is best for you. The combination approach is pretty simple, where you take a specific amount out now. So you're going to tell the state, send me a partial lump sum, and then the rest rolls over, again, IRA or deferred comp, so that it's tax deferred and continues growing for your future. Now, I'll say this, like partial lump sum, this combination approach, it's not the most common one I see. I think I had 2 clients do this last year, where they took out a smaller amount now, like 10 to 15,000, right when they retired, and then we rolled the rest into an IRA. So it's an option. Again, I find that most people will put it into an IRA or deferred comp first, but it is helpful if you don't want to have like one more transaction or one more thing to do, if that makes sense. So, another client I met with this week, they are retiring in June, and because of their pension, Social Security, their income needs, we're going to be using Drop and deferred comp more for growth. Now, we're going to set aside a small portion for discretionary income. So if they have like a big expense comes up, they're planning to do some travel in the first few years of retirement. So we're setting aside some from Drop for discretionary income, and then the rest we're going to position for growth. And this really gives us flexibility, and now we can be more strategic about things. We're going to be looking at doing some like multi-year Roth conversions, because most of their money is currently in those tax-deferred vehicles. Really, almost all of it is in tax-deferred vehicles. So we're going to look at being strategic, being tactical, doing some Roth conversions over the next few years so they have some balance when it comes to their types of accounts, right? So they have some accounts that are going to be fully taxable, some are partially taxable, and then some are non-taxable. Because once we figure out the income part, once income is covered, planning can now be smarter. We can now be strategic. We can now be tactical and really look through the lens of how do we make your plan better. So now that we've covered the options, let's answer the real question, which is which one fits you best? And we're going to use that plan first framework to decide. And if you're thinking, April, I just want someone to help me tell me what to do with my drop, Here's what I'd recommend. I would recommend scheduling a retirement focus session with me or someone on my team. This is a one-on-one review of your pension, drop balance, your income, retirement timeline, so that you walk away knowing what to do, when to do it, and why. So to get started, you'll request our FRS retirement intake form. It's a super short form, takes about 3 minutes for you to complete. We review it, and then we're going to match you with the right advisor. This could be me, this could be another advisor on my team, and we'll get your retirement focus session scheduled. Now, there's no cost for the focus session because we're going to walk through what are your options. We're going to answer questions that you've got about your upcoming retirement, and we'll talk to you more about how do we work with clients, because then we can decide if it makes sense for us to work together in some capacity. And if it does, that might look like us helping manage your investments. That might be building a full retirement income plan. That might be just getting the drop decision handled in the right way. But once we go through this initial conversation, we'll have a better idea of what sort of support you need. So to get started, you can scan the QR code on your screen, or you can click the link that's in the description box to request the intake form. All right, let's get back to the decision itself, which is which option is going to fit you best. So here's the rule that we find protects people from costly mistakes, and that is look at the job first and the option second. So the question we want to be asking is, what job does this money need to do for me in retirement? Income, liquidity, or growth? Because once we name the job, the option then becomes obvious, and then the investments follow, not the other way around. If a dollar doesn't have a job, it gets wasted. Let me say that again. If a dollar doesn't have a job, it gets wasted. Here's the thing. 2 people can have the same drop balance and make completely different decisions, and they can both be right. It depends on income, taxes, timing, and what the rest of the plan is doing. I find sometimes people get frustrated with that because they just want me to tell them like one rule that applies to everybody, but that's not how it works. Everyone's situation is different. So we have to look at your situation to know which one is best for you. So now let me walk you through this plan that I use with clients to help answer this question quickly and simply. So this is the planning structure we use with every client. First, we want to look at a spending plan for retirement. Now, this is not a restrictive budget. I'm not a budget person. This is what we want to know is, what does it actually take to live your life the way you want to live it? Yes, we want to look at fixed bills, but we also want to think lifestyle. Are we going to travel? Do we need to move? Are we going to volunteer? Are we going to be working in some capacity? All of these things play a part, but we want to know about what does it take to live your life. Because then we can take this spending plan and match it up with your guaranteed income. So we're going to look at your Social Security. We're going to look at your pension, because those are going to be the baseline of your retirement income. And we're going to take a look at so once we know your guaranteed income, we know your pension, we know your Social Security, we're going to look at your spending plan. We're going to look at other big costs. Sometimes people forget these: taxes and Medicare or healthcare in retirement. And with those pieces, we're going to note in black and white whether you have a surplus or a deficit based on your guaranteed income. And this becomes a decision tree for your drop and for your other retirement accounts or investments. If there's a deficit, then we need to decide, do you need more guaranteed income, like the person I was talking about earlier? Or maybe we just need discretionary income from drop to cover things like travel, home projects, unexpected expenses, things like that. If there's a surplus, then we can decide how much should be in discretionary income, and then how much should we be tilting towards growth so your buying power holds over time. We know you're going to need more income tomorrow than you do today. So that's why we want to have that growth bucket. We've got to have assets that are continuing to grow on your balance sheet. And then we want to keep the right amount of liquidity outside the market so cash is available when you need it. And that way you're not forced to sell at the wrong time. We all know the market is volatile. Just look at the last 12 months, what's been happening in the market. So we know that's going to happen. Now we also know the market is up more than it's down. It's usually up 4 out of 5 years, but we have to have a plan for when the market's down. And that's where this liquidity bucket comes in. And then we can assign jobs, right? Some dollars provide guaranteed income. Some fund discretionary expenses. Some we're going to have for growth for the future, and then some stay liquid. Because once the jobs are clear, the right choices of what you need to do and how to have it invested become obvious. And this is where that professional judgment comes in, because you're not going to find all these answers on just a worksheet, right? It's about working with someone who's seen hundreds and hundreds of plans and has some of the ideas and the experience and the knowledge to help you figure this part out. This way you can implement the right accounts, the right buckets at the right time with the right investments so that you've got the same dollars, but a better outcome. I met with a client of mine this week, and we've been working together for the past few years on his retirement plan, and he's retiring this year. And I'll tell you, it's so fun to see these plans come to fruition, to see someone who's like, we've been working on this and tweaking and looking at it for years. And anyway, it's really fun to see it all come together. And his plan is rock solid. But when we met the other day, he was nervous. Retirement's a big change. I'm sure you're feeling that too. I often equate it to, I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, I'm about to jump off, and I'm wondering, hey, is this parachute really going to open? I'll say for my client this week, by the end of the meeting, after we walked through everything again, he felt so much better. We already had the plan in place, but we just needed to go through it again for him to see it again in black and white, see it on paper. And also his retirement's coming up this year. So we were talking about, hey, some things that we do need to work on and kind of button up between now and when he retires. But we're not starting from scratch. We're just kind of implementing it at this point. So I want you to imagine how that feels of knowing you have your plan in place and then you know exactly what you need to do and when you need to do it. So if what we've been covering today has you thinking, I want to be sure I'm handling this the right way, this is when that retirement focus session comes in. So retirement focus session, it's a one-on-one call, and we're going to get clear on 3 things. Where do you stand today? What does your pension look like? Your drop, savings, it doesn't have to be exact numbers, but ballpark, get a loose idea of where things are today. And we're going to talk about what's possible. What are these decisions that we need to be making either now or later, and then what to do next so that you leave with specific actions that you can take. And again, you have an idea of what do I need to do now and when do I need to do it. Drop is one decision, but retirement is part of a bigger system and a plan. So the goal of these calls is clarity around where you are, what's possible, what to do next, and that's what we do in these one-on-one meetings. So to get started, if you'd like to schedule your retirement focus session to meet with us to start working on this, you can request your FRS retirement intake form. As I said earlier, it's super short form, takes about 3 minutes. It tells us a little bit about where you are, like what decisions are on your plate, what kind of support you're looking for. And then we can match you with the right advisor. That could be me, that could be someone on my team. I'm based in Tallahassee and I have other advisors here. And then we also have advisors throughout Florida. And so once we can match you up, we'll get your retirement focus session scheduled. So to request the intake form, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen, or you can click the link in the description box. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope if just one idea helps you keep more money in your pocket or helps you avoid some mistakes, and that is time well spent. And if after today you've got a specific question that pops up, feel free to email me. My team and I, we read every message. With a few smart moves, you can take control of your income, your taxes, and your retirement. So thanks again for being here with me today, and I look forward to connecting with you all soon. Bye now.